Hi, I'm Eva, and I'm here for another episode of my podcast, The Charm of It, in which I unpack my knitting basket and talk about yarn and projects and general knitting techniques, philosophy, that kind of stuff. And thank you so much if you're a returning viewer for coming back, and if you're a new viewer for giving me a try. While I was gone, I went home to my family for Christmas and New Year's, and while I was gone, my subscribers doubled, which was a little crazy, and I really appreciate everyone who gave me a go and decided to see what future episodes held in store. It's a little overwhelming. I'm pretty sure that I have Jenny at the Tiny Paper Foxes podcast to thank for that, because she mentioned me right before Christmas, and her podcast is very popular and for very good reasons. If you haven't seen it for some reason, you should definitely add it to your list, because she's got a great podcast. I love the way she talks about knitting, and the way her podcast looks is just very enjoyable, and her husband is now joining her even more regularly because he's interested in spinning and fiber. Anyway, so yes, thank you, Jenny, for mentioning me, and hello to everyone who found me from her podcast. There is a Ravelry group in case you want to chat with me about whatever. It's also called The Charm of It, and I always include a link down in the show notes. You can also find me on Instagram, and of course Ravelry. My username is the same, The Charm of It, and I have a blog at thecharmofit.wordpress.com. So I think that's everywhere you can find me. And I suppose that we should start to talk about the knitting. First of all, I'll mention I'm wearing my Au Printemps jacket, which I knit in March. It is out of Quince & Company's Lark, which is their worsted weight wool in the Bird's Egg colorway. And I used the Isis tailcoat pattern by Kerry-Hélène something. I can't remember her last name, but she does pearl alpaca designs as well. And you can always find that on my project page. I tend to just link to my Ravelry project notebook instead of doing a lot of details on my blog post, just because I put everything in there. And yeah, so let's see. Oh, I should also mention that I am drinking jasmine green tea with honey in a mug I got from a friend for Christmas that I love, because it's got a little filter in it, so I can just make the tea right in there. And it changes color when you add hot water. Plus, clearly he knows me well and got me in a beautiful minty color. And let's get started talking about my works in progress. I don't have too many going right now, but I have a few. So first up, this one is actually not in progress at the moment because I've needed to pause. This is my Castles in the Air shawl. And it is out of Quince & Company Piper, which is a really delicious heavy lace weight yarn that's 50% mohair and 50% merino, and it's all from Texan animals, which is very neat since my family lives in Texas and I spent quite a few years of my childhood there in different places. My father was in the Air Force, so we moved around. This is the Abilene colorway, which is a really beautiful gray with kind of purpley pink undertones. I already made a hat out of it, and now I'm using the other 3 skeins I have to make a shawl. I'm holding it doubled for this because I found when I knit neckwear, I really like the extra squishiness that comes from using sport weight or heavier yarns versus the lace weight yarn, final finished objects. And I'm using the mustard seed shawl pattern from Boo Knits. So, all of the details out of the way. I started this on January 1st. It was my New Year's cast on. I don't do a Christmas Eve cast on, but I like the idea of doing a New Year's one. And I knit basically everything, the plain bit. So the next section after this is beading, and then it goes into beading and lace. And so I knit this, and then I stopped because if you notice the edge, it would be easier for you to notice if my camera wanted to focus. Come on. Okay, so the edge, very tight compared to the body. So I am a newbie to knitting shawls, and I wasn't really sure if that was normal or not. So I shared a photo on Instagram because I know a lot of other knitters are very good at shawls and have a lot of experience. And the consensus was that it could definitely be a sign of trouble. So I decided to put it on hold because I'm fine ripping things, but I didn't really want to have to rip out beads because beading is a little fiddly. And block it and see what happens. But I didn't have any wool soap down in Texas, so I waited, and I will be blocking that this afternoon. It really didn't take that long to knit this part. It's mainly stockinette with just some fun pearl texture, and I really love this yarn. So I'm perfectly happy reknitting it. In fact, I almost just frogged it while I was still in Texas and said I'd be prepared to start again. But I decided to block it and see what happens, just in case. But I did do one more repeat than the pattern calls for because I wanted to be a nice big shawl. Jenny of Tiny Paper Foxes wears really big shawls, and I think they look very good on her. So that is work in progress number 1. Luckily, the other 2 are not having similar problems. So work in progress number 2 is a sock. I love socks, so I always have one on the needles. And this one is in Knit Picks Hawthorne Kettle Dye. Oh, come on. I tried a different focus setting on my camera today, and I think it's going to work better in the long run. But but please forgive any kinks along the way. So this is, as I was saying, the Hawthorne Kettle Dye in the Fawn colorway, which is a really beautiful variegated browns. And they're the kind of rich, deep browns that remind me of healthy soil. So I'm calling this the Loamy Field Socks because I also think that this pattern is a little bit like furrows. While the sides are straight like furrows, the middle would be like if I tried to plow a field. Too many curves. This is the artichoke lace pattern, I believe. Artichoke something pattern. And it's free on Ravelry. It's quite simple, but I really like the way it worked out. As you will see shortly, I knit quite a few very simple socks over Christmas break because I needed conversation knitting. And so when I came to cast this pair on, I wanted something just a little more interesting to give a change of pace, I suppose. I cast this on a few days ago so that I would have it for my flight back. And I worked on it a little bit then, and then yesterday while I was running errands, I worked on it while I was waiting for the bus, so now I am to the heel flap. You'll notice I chose to knit it pretty short. That's because I want to wear these with my Oxfords and ankle boots, and I have found that I like to have a shorter cuff, because if I do the 6-inch cuff and then the 2-inch heel flap, it ends up hitting right where my calf gets full, and it looks a little awkward when I wear it with knee-length skirts. So. Yep, I'm really pleased with how this is turning out, and I can't wait to have a finished pattern. I am entering this in the Solid Socks January knit-along. The theme is brown, and we will see. It might be too variegated for their group, but either way, I have a pretty pair of socks, so not stressing about that. I'll probably turn that heel this afternoon, too. And my final work in progress was the main thing that I knit on the airplane. And these are my Folksy leg warmers. I just finished the first one today. It's using the Tiny Owl pattern for Cloudy Day leg warmers. I've never knit a pair of leg warmers before, so I'm not sure how, sorry, I thought I had lost time. Anyway, I'm not sure how useful they'll be in my wardrobe, but I think they'll be very useful because I wear wool knee-length skirts all through the winter. Even though it gets cold here, I just wear them with tall boots. And so I think that this will be really nice. I have a few pair of knee-high wool socks that I wear all the time. And I'm knitting these out of Elsa Wool Cormo in the medium gray color in her worsted spun sport weight. Whew, there's always a lot of details with her yarn. I love that you can get it in so many different styles. And I love her yarn. I love Cormo. It's super soft and smushy. And yeah, I had a great time with this pattern. As you can see, it's just really straightforward lace. Maybe you can't see if my camera's going to be a jerk. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, so it's really straightforward lace. The pattern just has you cast on one amount of stitches and do those stitches for the whole thing, but my calves are significantly larger than my ankles, and so I would have either had baggy ankles or a really stretched out calf. So instead I added a little bit of shaping that I will tell you about right after I stop this segment and begin again. Since I use a regular camera, not a webcam, I have to record in chunks, so that's why things end up a little spliced together. Hopefully Thistle's nap won't be too disturbed. I am back, and this time I let the camera focus on the leg warmer. So as you can see, I just did calf increases and then decreases in the middle. This pattern was very easy to do the shaping because there are 3 plain knit rows and the stitch is a multiple of 6. It's a free pattern, by the way, so I'm not giving away too many secrets. So on the plain rows where I needed to increase, I would just do 2 increases on every row, so then I'd have 6 more stitches and I could incorporate that into the lace pattern. So yeah, I just made sure that I was doing the increases on either side of that center stitch each time. Come on, camera. To get a nice final result. I think I'll go back to my other focusing style since now the camera is just being cranky. And I will write that up in more detail on my project page, probably when I've done the second one, because of course I didn't take notes since I was doing it kind of on the plane or on the fly. And so I'll just have to read my knitting to make a second matching one. But after I did the lace pattern up to the knee, I did a few inches of just 2x2 ribbing, and I did it 2x2 so that I could fold it over and make it whatever length I want. It's especially nice when you're walking through really deep snow. You can fold it over and then the snow can't get in. So I'm very excited about this. I'm actually extra excited, and the reason I named them my folksy leg warmers is that they will go perfectly with a pink skirt that I've been sewing up. All I need to do is do the hem, so hopefully I will be able to show you the skirt and 2 leg warmers on the next episode as finished objects. For the cast on, I just did the German twisted cast on, which is my go-to when I need a stretchy one. And for the cast off, I did the same invisible 2x2 sewn bind off that I did on my friend Care's blue socks a few episodes ago. And I just used a YouTube video for that by Knit Freedom. So I'll include that on the project page as well in case you're interested. It's basically Kitchener, and it works even better. She has an invisible 1x1 rib video that works really well. But the 2x2 adaptation works well too. What I really wanted was a bind off that looked the same from both sides so that I could fold it over without problems. On this jacket, I needed a bind off that worked both ways too because of the collar, so I did an I-cord bind off. Come on, camera. Maybe if I cover up my face. Nope. Sorry. But I did an I-cord bind off, which you can kind of see here, so that it would be the same since the collar folds over. And that works really well when you don't need a lot of stretch. But since these have to go, since especially this part, the bound off part has to go over my calf, and as you can see my calves are fuller, then I wanted to make sure I had maximum stretch. So there we go. To decide on where to do the calf increases and decreases, I just kept trying it on. So, pretty simple. And I will answer a quick question from my Ravelry group before I talk about finished objects. Before I started recording a podcast, I never understood why video podcasters would drink while they were recording their video. I'm like, are they that thirsty? But it turns out if you're just talking to a camera, then there's no natural pauses. Your throat gets really dry. So, in case you were curious, I think that's why we all drink tea and things. Okay, so this question comes from Mimi MC on Ravelry. And she asked, how do I store my knits? Because she has found that when she hangs her sweaters, they can get distorted, and when she folds them, they can get creased. So I always fold mine. I never, ever, ever hang sweaters because I don't hang store-bought sweaters either, because the knit fabric ends up getting stretched, and then it's all droopy and sad. So I fold all of my knits, and to be honest, I have a pretty casual style, so I'm not particularly fazed by a few wrinkles or creases. I don't tend to get really dramatic ones. Maybe the way I fold just doesn't tend to do really sharp creases, or maybe I'm wearing my sweaters enough that they don't get super sharp creases. But if I pull it out and I kind of thwack it, and it looks like there's some lines, I'll just leave it in my bathroom while I shower, and then the steam relaxes it enough for me. But I'm fine looking a little rumpled. It doesn't faze me. So with this jacket, actually, because it's more of a jacket than a sweater, I want to store it with all my other jackets, which are woven blazers, which hang. So this one I do actually keep on a hanger, but instead of putting it the way you would put a normal shirt, where the hanger goes into the shoulders, I fold it and I hang it over the middle of it, the way you would trousers. And that doesn't seem to distort the fabric too much, especially since this is 100% wool. It's not superwash, and it doesn't have any alpaca or cotton or anything in it, so it doesn't stretch much on its own. It's, tends to keep its shape. So that could be another method that you could try if you have a lot of hanging space. Yeah, I wish I had better answers, but I definitely don't. I fold my sweaters. Actually, I fold everything. I believe it's the same way that Marie Kondo does, so now it's really famous, but I found some internet video years ago that showed this method. And so the way you fold them, you end up putting them in the drawer so that they're all like this instead of on top of each other. So when you open the drawer, you can immediately see everything. I don't know if I'm describing this very well. I will try to find a link to that video. I'm sure if Marie Kondo talks about it now, there's probably a million videos. But yeah, so I really love that because then I can see everything that I have when I pull open the drawer and nothing gets forgotten about. So that will be my only other advice. Time to talk about my finished objects. The first one was almost finished on my last episode. It is the Peter Pan collar that I crocheted to use up the very last of the skein of Purl Soho line weight that I bought when I visited New York City for the first time for my birthday this past April. It's in the peacock color, which is a beautiful muted teal that I really love. And as I mentioned on my last episode, since I was using up scraps, I was playing a bit of yarn chicken and I lost with just a few shells to go. So I ripped back and I ended up doing a more solid round row, and then I finished off with just a row of single crochets to make it a little bit longer. And finally I added a little brass button from my button tin to the end. I think that I was inspired by the art history knit along currently going on in the Knitting Pretty podcast group, because once I saw it all together with the brass button, I realized it looked a lot like the King Tutankhamun bust. That was one of her inspiration photos for that project. So I won't enter this because it's so small, but it did make me smile. I haven't blocked it yet. Here, I'll put it on. So obviously this is not what I'll be wearing it with. I haven't blocked it yet, but one of the projects mentioned that she steam blocked it over a towel so that it was kind of shaped for shoulders. And that seemed like a good idea, so I will do that and then try wearing it with some of my high neck t-shirts. I really like it, so if it turns out that it's wearable and kind of works in my everyday outfit, then I think I would definitely use more of my scraps that way. I can't crochet very much. It hurts, it aggravates my arthritis, but I can certainly crochet a little bit for projects like that. And it's kind of fun. I crocheted a lot when I was little, so there's a nostalgia factor there, which is nice. Not to mention it goes really quickly. And then the other finished objects are what I finished over Christmas break. Basically socks. We'll start with the Caravanserai socks, which I knit for the desert theme in the Solid Socks group, as well as the Mystery Knit Along in the other group. I need to clip those ends. Anyway, so I finished one of them before I left, and I took the yarn and I took the skein and waited to cast on for the second one until I was down there so that I would get more knitting time out of it. As you can see, it's a twisted stitch pattern that goes down the middle, and then on the back there's this nice little triangle to the ribbing, and the rest of it is just plain stockinette. I knit these out of Barocco Ultra Alpaca Fine, which is one of my favorite sock yarns. It's a blend of alpaca, wool, and nylon, and I think this is my 5th pair of socks using it, all in different colorways. This is the Tiger's Eye colorway, which is a really pretty kind of burnished gold Renaissance color that I cannot wear near my face, but I figured that with socks it would be okay, and I'm really looking forward to wearing these and adding a touch of gold to various outfits. I will say that I really enjoy this yarn, but it is not good for twisted knitting because it tends to be a bit splitty anyway, so when you're doing a bunch of twisted stitches, it gets a little frustrating. But I'm really pleased with the final result. I used the Twisted Mockery pattern on Ravelry, which is free, and it was originally a mystery knit along for the Sock Knitters Anonymous group, but now you can see what it looks like. I don't see myself joining a mystery knit along because I'm fairly picky about what I knit, and I really enjoy matching patterns and yarn and colors and themes and that kind of thing, and so not knowing the final product would drive me a little insane. But yeah, but knitting them after the fact is very enjoyable. These actually barely took up any yarn. I think I have 44 grams out of the 100 left over. I knit them to pattern, but I guess I got a pretty fine gauge, so I don't know why they turned out so yarn light, since usually twisted knitting, twisted stitches tends to eat up yarn, but that'll be really fun because that's enough left over for the contrast color of a colorwork project, 40 grams. And yeah, I'm really in love with these golds lately. I wish they loved me back so I could wear them closer to my face, but that's okay. My plain knitting, because obviously I wasn't going to do a twisted stitch pattern with splitty yarn on an airplane, was these socks, which I am calling Sally Sells Seashells by the Seashore, because the colors remind me of the ocean. I think my camera has decided to go rogue. There it goes. This is the Knit Picks Felici in Baker Street. Felici is a self-striping yarn, and I was sent this by Erin of Holland Handmade. She has a podcast as well, as a surprise, so I wanted to knit these up. This yarn is so soft. I don't know how it will wear, but it's super, super soft. So, since it's self-striping, I wanted a pretty simple project, so I looked at all the projects that have been knit with this yarn. Come here. Thistle went down, and now she's trying to decide if she can get back up. You're good. Okay, so I looked at all the projects that have been knit with this colorway, and I noticed that I liked the ones with pearls more. So I used the Vanilla Latte Socks pattern, which is a free pattern on Ravelry. Moth might be coming to join us as well. Yep. You can't see her, but she is in my lap too now. There she is. So for new viewers, this is Moth, my cat. Yeah. And so I used the Vanilla Latte Sock pattern, which is basically garter stitch rib. And I had to modify it because my feet prefer a 60 stitch sock, and this pattern was doing, I think, an 8 stitch repeat, so that would have been 56 or 64 stitches. So I just took out 2 of the knit stitches in each column so that it was a 6 stitch repeat, which worked really well. I have strong feelings about things matching. So I used the internet to find out how to do matching striped socks with self-striping yarn, and it suggested that you begin the sock at the same colorway in both skeins. So that's what I did. I just kept pulling yarn out until I got to the dark blue, and that worked really well. I ended up using the yarn that I pulled out for the heel, so it didn't go to waste or anything, and I'm really pleased that they match. There's like 1 extra round of blue down at the toes, but that's okay. Close enough. So for the heel, I did the Fish Lips Kiss heel. This is my first time doing that heel. You gonna focus? I'll just keep talking while the camera decides whether or not to show you the heel. And Usually I do a traditional heel flap in gussets because I like how it fits, but with self-striping yarn, if I did that, the stripes would change their width because of the extra stitches, and I didn't like that idea at all. So a lot of podcasters sing the praises of the Fish Lips Kiss heel, which is a deeper type of short row heel, and it's only $1. You buy the technique, and I would definitely recommend it. The file that you get has full illustrations, like photographs of all the techniques that you're doing, and it's super detailed at every step. So I knit this for the first time on an airplane. I didn't have, access to the internet to help me out, and I had absolutely no problems doing it. So yeah, and it fits me better than a traditional short row heel. It's definitely deeper. I still prefer a heel flap for general socks because the traditional heel flap and gusset just fits me really well. I have a fairly high arch, but for situations like this where I don't want the extra stitches from the gusset, then I will definitely use it in the future, and I would suggest getting it if you are at all interested in those kind of socks. It works for both toe up and top down. I knit these top down. And she also includes directions for how to make socks that fit other people with just a cardboard tracing of their foot. So that would be really helpful if you do a lot of gift sock knitting. So there's that. The final pair of socks are these, and I called them This Little Piggy socks because I was working on them. My family plays a lot of games, and we were playing Pass the Pigs, which is this party game where there's these two little rubber pigs, and you throw them, and depending on how they fall, you can get points, basically. It's much more fun than it sounds because you can decide whether to keep rolling for more points, but then if they fall in certain configurations, you lose all the points from that round. So it gets really dramatic, and it brings out people who gamble versus people who are more risk-averse, like myself. Anyway, so this is the exact same color pink as the little rubber pigs, so that's where it's got its name from. And I'll tell you more about them when I start recording the next clip. As I was saying, these were my third and final pair of socks from the trip. And I knit them out of Quince & Company's Finch in their Petal colorway, which is a very pale blush. And it tends a little towards the warmer side. And then I did contrasting toes and heels in Quince & Company's Turn in Stonington, which is a very cool gray. I also knit them toe up, which is because I only had one skein of Petal, which is 50 grams, and usually my a finished pair of socks takes 70 to 80 grams. So I wanted to knit these toe up so that I could make them as long as possible. And I used the Hermione's Everyday Socks pattern for the texture because I just wanted something simple and cozy. This is a very feminine color, and usually with very feminine colors I like to do slightly simpler socks. Plus, since I was knitting these while I was chatting with my family or playing games, as the case may be, I needed something that was very easy to pick up and put aside. I just did a Jenny's Magic Cast On. Judy's Magic Cast On. It's Jenny's Surprisingly Stretchy Bind Off. Anyway, Judy's Magic Cast On for the toe, and I did increases in a way that I do the decreases on my top-down socks to get a nice round toe. And then I tried a new heel. I've done gusset toe-up heels before, but only the method Wendy Johnson describes in her books, where you have to start your increases for the gusset, and if you kind of guess wrong, you have to either rip all the way back or like knit straight with all those gusset stitches. I don't know. I find it a bit fiddly. So this method was really interesting because it's essentially the same heel flap gusset approach as a top-down sock, but in reverse. And my camera does not want you to see the details of that. There we go. Okay. So you start here, and I just started when I got to the ball of my heel. And you knit a heel flap just like you would for top down, and then you turn it just like you would, and then you pick up for the gusset, and then the tutorial kind of leaves you hanging as to what you do for that. She refers you to her patterns, which are all paid for, but since I've done so many of these heels, it seemed pretty obvious to me. So at this point, once you've picked the stitches back up, you're knitting in the round again. So I continued in pattern for the front, and I continued doing a slip stitch while I did the gusset decreases so that I would have that reinforcement at the back of the heel as well as underneath the heel. And then once I finished the gusset decreases, I switched back to working in pattern all the way around. And it fits really well. I really liked not having to guess where to begin my gusset increases, and if I had guessed wrong, it would have been much simpler to rip that back. And I like having the reinforcement underneath as well as behind my heel. I do that with my top-down socks too, because if socks wear out for me, it's going to be somewhere around the heel and usually the ball of the heel. So yes, that is definitely, and the other nice thing, if you're doing it in contrast color, the contrast color ends up mainly on the bottom, which is nice if you don't want it to show when you're wearing socks, because otherwise if you did it top down, that contrast color would be here, so it might show above your socks, above your shoes, depending on what type of shoes you're wearing. And because of the way it's knit, you don't have to cut your main color, so you have 2 less ends to weave in at the end. I'm really pleased with how that turned out. For the top, I just did 1x1 ribbing, followed by the invisible sewn bind off, which is also from Knit Freedom, the same one I was talking about with the 2x2 rib bind off. It's really nice. You're basically doing Kitchener stitch, and even though my camera's not going to let me show you, it has the same effect almost visually as a tubular cast off, but it's less work. There we go. So this is the bind off that I used on all my first socks, because they were toe up, and as you can see, it works really well and it's nice and stretchy. And because I did this bind off on all of my first socks, I had already learned Kitchener or grafting without even realizing that that's what I was doing. So this gives you a lot of practice with doing that. And the videos from Knit Freedom are really, really good. She is definitely aiming at people who have never done it before. She has a very calm, relaxed voice. She shows you it from every possible angle, so I definitely recommend her videos if you are a visual learner. And here are my finished socks. They've already got some fur on them, but I am very pleased with how they turned out, and they got quite tall for 50 grams of the petal. These are also for the Make Two Along, which Jenny of Tiny Paper Podcast, that made no sense. Tiny Paper Fox's podcast is hosting right now, because she likes to put her knitting projects into the context of a handmade wardrobe, so she likes to make outfits. And so the Make Two Along, the idea is to make 2 things that you're going to wear together. So I'm going to wear these with that pink sweater, my thistledown sweater that I finished right before break. Yeah, so that's why I knit these now. I really like Quince & Company Finch for socks. I plan to do a whole episode talking about different sock yarns I've tried and showing you the different socks and how they've stood up. So I won't get into too much detail, but I will say if you're looking for a non-superwash sock yarn option, I found that the socks I have in Finch, they hold up very well and they fit me well. I do have to usually go down a few stitches, like these are 56 stitch socks instead of 60 to 64, which is what I usually do, because the yarn is a little bit plumper, but as long as you take that into account, they keep their shape through multiple wearings, so something to think about. Yeah. Thistle, you can come back up. I think I will do my topic now, because I have a lot of stash acquisition to show you, which we will get into soon. It was Christmas, but I thought since this is my first podcast of 2016, I would go ahead and talk about my knitting resolutions. I don't make a lot of specific resolutions, like I don't want to knit a sock a month or anything like that, but I do have a few general ones. Come on, Thistle. The biggest one, sorry, Thistle got a little enthusiastic in her curling up there. So the biggest one might surprise some people, but I want to knit more slowly in 2016. The last few months of 2015, which is also when I started my podcast, I became kind of a knitting fanatic. Pretty much all my spare time, if I wasn't knitting, I was thinking about knitting, and it's all I wanted to do, and I knit a ton of projects, and I knit lots and lots of yards of yarn. I was actually going to do a little graph for you, but then it's been a long kind of few days getting back to New York, so I wanted to record this before the sun went down. I might do that on the next episode, though. Who doesn't love a good graph? Anyway, and that's not really typical for me, and while I really love knitting and I love having it a part of my life, I prefer it to feel like a luxury instead of something that I need to be doing every minute that I can possibly do it. I want it to feel a little more special than that. And also, yarn is expensive. So, quite frankly, my wallet does not really want me knitting as many skeins of yarn per month as I was knitting in the end of 2015. So that's my first resolution, I guess, is to knit more slowly, more mindfully, and just in a relaxed, luxurious thing. And I think part of why I started knitting more quickly is because I was adding to my stash, and so suddenly my stash, instead of being something for me to enjoy in the future, became more of a to-do list where I needed to get the projects done. And that's just not the attitude I want for a hobby. So that's my main resolution. The other thing that I really want to do this year is play more with color. I have tend to knit a lot of solid projects, and that's because I really enjoy mixing colors in my outfits, and I have a closet with lots of different colors in it, so if I want something to be very versatile, it made more sense to me to knit it in a solid. But I really enjoy seeing the multicolored projects on Ravelry, and I'm okay with losing a bit of versatility in exchange for that. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. I plan to do some more of the Fair Isle style. I actually got the Alice Starmore book on Fair Isle knitting for Christmas. I'm very excited about that. And then also just maybe doing different edgings, contrast heels and toes like I did with the pink socks, that kind of thing. They were my first contrast heels and toes. And then finally, I would like to try out steeking. I'm planning to knit a Fair Isle jumper, so it's stranded color work, but I guess it's not a traditional Fair Isle pattern. So I'm planning to do a stranded color work jumper, and that has steeked armholes, and probably a neckline too. I haven't looked at the pattern yet. So, and that's from the book Stranded Color Work by Anne Kingston, and she's got some other little projects in there to help you practice steeking first in case you're worried about cutting open a whole sweater. But honestly, I've cut my knitting before for other reasons, so I think I'll be good with the steeking. And yeah, other than that, I just want to continue the way that I have been, designing my own things when I can't find something that works well, and continuing to explore ethnic knitting. I plan to do an Aran sweater soon, and connect more with this wonderful community of knitters around the world that the internet has brought together. So those are my plans for 2016. And when I come back for my next clip, we will talk about stash enhancement. Before I get to stash enhancement, I just want to say that I know how lucky I am to get the gifts that you're going to see, and that basically I'm planning to only knit from stash for probably the next year, honestly, other than projects that I want to make for other people. I think I have enough yarn for personal projects to last me the next 12 months, which is wonderful because I'm not going to have the spending money that I had before anyway. So I didn't make it a New Year's resolution to knit from stash because that's not a challenge for me. I prefer to not buy things, although you might find that difficult to believe since I always seem to have something to talk about on the podcast. But generally, I don't buy. I really like the voluntary simplicity movement and the idea of enough, and I sometimes find it challenging to reconcile knitting as a hobby with that kind of philosophy. So I certainly have enough stash at the moment, and I'm really excited to just be able to knit it for the next few months and enjoy that and not have to spend any money on it. So I also want to say that, so some of it is going to be gifts, and then some of it I bought at my former local yarn store. I don't really have a local yarn store here anymore when it's easily accessible, so I tend to buy online. But when I was in Texas, where I started knitting, there was a yarn store very close by, And so I went there for a lot of projects, and they were always very helpful and friendly. So, of course, when I went back to my family, I visited them, and they were also having a wonderful sale. So it was a chance to support a local business and stock up on yarn for the months ahead. And, of course, I had Christmas money, too, to spend. So just want to say I know that I'm lucky and that this is not usual, and that any stash acquisition segments in the future will only be talking about gift knitting. So I promise, I do not usually go crazy. And quite frankly, I am now full. Like, my stash storage allocation is completely full, so. But it's nice, on the other hand, to know that I can knit happily for the next year and not have to worry about spending money, because I have a vet bill that's going to be coming up. Thistle needs her teeth cleaned, and various other projects that will be eating up my fun money instead of knitting. So knitting is a pricey hobby, so it's nice to have that taken care of. Anyway, I believe I've now rambled far too long. So let's show off the yarn. This was one of my Christmas presents from my parents, and Thistle is now trying to lay on it. Hey, sweetie. Okay. Apologies if you heard all of her nail clicking. This is a beautiful, beautiful dye job from October House, which is an independent dyer. She is based in Arkansas, I believe, and I learned about her on the Dark Matter Knits podcast, which is no longer being updated, but I went to her website and I was just blown away by how cohesive and beautiful her aesthetic is. She tends to knit warm autumnal, or not knit, she tends to dye warm autumnal colors, which are not the best for me. But this color is muscadine, and it's cool enough that I will be able to wear a sweater in it. And last year I had her dye some fiber for me that I used to make a wreath for my wall. And I just loved it to death. So I'm so pleased about this. It's Blueface Luster 2-ply fingering. It's her Arbor fingering base. And it's not superwash, it's just regular, which is what I prefer. And it comes in 490 yards to 100 grams. So I got 3 skeins of it to make into a sweater. This is definitely going to be a cardigan because I have a couple blouses that it will look perfect with. But I haven't decided yet what type of cardigan. I'm thinking maybe some lace panels, but I'm not sure. It smells sheepy too. So, yes. October House Fiber Arts if you are interested in just beautiful hand dyes. And she has a wide variety of bases, which is nice because, as I mentioned, I think last podcast, I don't like buying superwash yarn much. So, super excited about that. And then the other Christmas gift was a sweater quantity from Quince, but I'm only showing you one of each color because my bucket of yarn was overflowing. So the pink sweater that I knit, my Thistledown sweater, was based on an Alice Starmore pattern from her Tudor Roses book, the new one. And there's another sweater pattern in there called the Jane Seymour cardigan, which is beautiful. It's color work, and it's got a base color, and then it's got basically like a diagonal trellis style in a contrast color, and then later you embroider in another color little circles at each of the intersections. She also has triangles on all the edging, but I'm not going to do that. So this is relevant because I've been wanting to make a cardigan based on this anemone that I have. It's a seashell, and it's 2 shades of purple and then little white polka dots. I'll show it to you when I'm going to start the sweater. So as soon as I saw the Jane Seymour pattern, I realized that it would be perfect for that. And I already knew what colors of yarn I wanted, and so my mom was sweet enough to go ahead and get that for me because the pattern calls for a surprisingly large amount of yarn, like way more than I've ever needed to knit a sweater before. And it's probably more than I would have bought for myself, so my mom knew that, and she decided to treat me to it. And if I have lots of yarn left over, well, I will just make lots of matching accessories. It's fine with me. So this is Quince Turn, which is their silk wool blend. And it is the same yarn that I used to make my Melusine cardigan, the teal one with the twisted stitch knitting. And I love that sweater. It makes, like, this yarn makes wonderful, wonderful sweater fabric, and my camera is not going to focus. I apologize for that. Nope. So this is in the dusk colorway, which is a beautiful dusty mauve color. And this is going to be the background of the sweater. So this is the main color. Come here, sweetie. Thistle. Thistle is being a bit fussy today. Usually she just passes out, but I guess I've been moving too much. And then for the contrasting lines, I have Quince & Company Finch, which is their just wool fingering line in Damson, which is a dark grayed purple. Oh, of course, now it's going to focus here. Can we just get that? There we go. Okay, so there's the dusk on top, and this is Damson. And I love this color. Oh my goodness. I kind of hope I have enough leftovers so that I can have accessories in all these colors too. And finally, just for the little embroidered bits, I got a skein of Oyster, which is also Quince & Company Tern, so it's got that lovely silk sheen to it. And it's a kind of grayed white. They also do make Tern in a cream, in undyed cream, so I might order a skein of that too and see which one I like better in the context of the sweater. So I'm really looking forward to that, and it's a good thing I plan to knit slowly this year because I'm pretty sure that's going to be an epic pattern for me, even without all the little triangles. I'm going to start a new clip, and then I will tell you about the yarn that I bought myself. As I mentioned in the beginning, the yarn store near my mom's house was having a great sale, and I had Christmas money burning a hole in my pocket, and I decided to take advantage of the ability to see the yarn in person before I bought it and stock up so that I could just knit from stash for the rest of the year. So, first I got 2 skeins of sock yarn. Cascade Heritage Silk, which is one of my favorite sock yarns to work with, in this really beautiful dusty blue color. It is called color 5686. That's very inspiring. But I saw this on the shelf, and this is one of my favorite shades of blue. And it's tricky to find the shade, especially if you're buying online, because there are slightly brighter versions of it, or more saturated versions that don't work as well for me. So I decided to go ahead and snap it up, even though it is superwash. So it is 85% superwash merino and 15% silk. And I've been really happy with how this yarn has held up in the socks that I've knit with it. Plus, sometimes it's difficult to decide, whether if you want to support a local store versus supporting good production practices. Ethical consumerism there's a lot of gray zones in there. So the other sock yarn I bought is also superwash merino. It's 90% superwash merino and 10% nylon. It's Happy Feet 100 Splash by the Plymouth Yarn Company, which I don't know much about, to be honest, but this yarn was made in Peru. I'm pretty sure that it was, I don't know, do they have superwash processing in Peru? I'm not sure. Anyway, it is oh, the name just escaped me, not confetti. Oh well, it's that type of yarn, where I think it's become very popular with hand dyers, and I just loved the colors in this skein, and I also thought it would be nice because it probably won't pool when it knits up, although we'll find out here now that my camera's focusing. We'll look at that pretty blue a little more closely. And I haven't decided what pattern I want to do with this, probably something pretty simple so that the colors shine through, but I want to do contrast cuffs and heels and toes, so I will go through my leftovers and see, because this has lots of pretty colors in it. Here, we'll undo the skein. Is it confetti yarn? I don't think that's what you call it. So, we'll see how it knits up. This is kind of a test for me. Speckled, that's what it's called. I got some of the Knit Picks Hawthorne Speckled for that squirrel that I knit my niece. So this will be some speckled yarn for actual socks. Oh, I forgot to mention how my Christmas presents went over, didn't I? My niece really loved her animals. Her favorite was the raccoon. You should have seen the way it was so cute. So she unwrapped it. Okay, so she unwrapped it, and she starts to pull it out, and she goes, "It's a raccoon!" And she had told me which pattern she liked, so it wasn't a big surprise which animals, because she's like me, she's very particular, so I don't surprise her with things. It doesn't end well. But I did have her pick a few favorites so that it would be a little bit of a surprise. Anyway, and she just got these big eyes, and she was just in awe of the raccoon. So yes, it was a very charming reaction to the present. The other two I had hidden in the tree for her to find before official unwrapping, and that went well too. She had a fun time with the scavenger hunt. And then let's see, my brother-in-law really loves his beanie. I was a little nervous. That's the one I did the beer glasses for. But apparently he had been wanting to buy a new beanie anyway, so he has been wearing it all the time, and he's really thrilled with it. I think he's going to stitch his company logo on it. I mentioned on Instagram, I don't think I mentioned it here, that he runs a craft brewery tour company in the Hill Country. So if you're in the Austin, New Braunfels, San Antonio area, look into Off-Roads Brewing Company if you're interested in learning more, or you just like local businesses, that kind of thing. So he's going to sew his logo on it, so he really liked it. And then my parents both really liked their hats as well. And of course I forgot to get pictures of them in it. I did get a picture of my brother-in-law in his beanie. And my sister's super excited about her sweater. She has decided she does not want a Hito Fude cardigan though, so she described the kind of sweater she wants, and she showed me her current favorite store-bought sweater. And then I brought my honeybee lace cardigan with me, which I knit out of linen. And she saw that, and she decided she wanted honeybee lace as well. So it's going to be like a slouchy, longer one in the honeybee pattern. So that should be fun. Back to yarn. So I got the 2 sock yarns, and then I saw this, which is 930 yards in one skein of lace weight merino, but not superwash, regular merino. And as I said, one of my goals is to play more with color this year instead of always sticking with solid one-color projects. And this is the Renaissance colorway from Interlacements yarn. And I loved every single color in this. So I'll go slowly to see if it's going to focus. Yep. So we've got teals, we've got a lot of plums. Clearly I'm in more of a plums and purple mood. Blues, and just a little bit of a very muted kind of sage green. And I would like to start knitting more with lace weight, because lace weight tends to be cheaper by the yard. And it tends to take longer to knit, and since I have more knitting time than I have knitting spending money, it seems like making friends with lace weight would be a good idea. And as you know, I'm still a newbie to neckwear and shawls and that kind of thing, but this yarn is so beautiful that I'm hoping that with the color changes it will inspire me to go ahead and knit a really big stole. Those are the kind of scarves I wear most often, the pashmina style ones, but I have yet to knit one because I don't know why knitting something flat doesn't appeal to me. Like, it's the same yardage whether you knit a sweater or a stole, right? But or a blanket, that kind of thing. But for some reason, I seem to stall out on blankets and scarves, and I never stall out on sweaters. So, not sure what's going on with that, but yeah. So, very excited about this. And so I found this on the shelf, and all their yarn was on sale, but their clearance yarn was on super, super duper sale. So then I wandered to the clearance section, and I went a little crazy, because they had Manos del Uruguay on sale in their silk blend, which is 70% merino, 30% silk. You might have noticed by now that I really love silk blend yarns. And so, independently, since I knew that I wanted to play with color, I found these colors. Okay, I'll do one of each so that you can see them best. So I picked them up, and I was admiring them, and I was thinking about all the different ways they could go together, and I was really happy, and I was imagining a shawl, and then I realized that they were the same colors as this, like almost exactly. down to the green and the maroon, or plum, I guess, not maroon. And then a little bit of cool gray. So then I had this giant dilemma, right? Because I don't need two shawls that have these colors. And originally I was going to do a shawl with this, and then maybe the gray edging. This is the Briar colorway, and it is a very pretty sage green with little blips of pink and gray in it. And then this is Bing Cherry, and this is Coal, which is kind of pewter gray. So I was trying to make my mom help me decide, but my mom is an enabler, so she was like, just buy it all. You can do two shawls. But I have limited closet space, so I was really torn. And then I remembered that there was another yarn that I had been coveting since I was a newbie knitter and first walked into the store. And that is also Manos del Uruguay in the same blend of silk and merino, but this one's called Fino, and it comes in 100-gram skeins instead of 50-gram skeins. So this is Rosewater, which is like the most perfect pale pink blush color I've seen. And as you might have guessed by now, that's one of my favorite colors. And when I come back, I will tell you what I plan to do with all of this yarn. I decided that the Rosewater would look absolutely beautiful with the Briar as an edging. And I really love how the names work too, Briar Rose. I enjoy fairy tales and that kind of thing. And it looks different enough from my Renaissance yarn that it would be okay to have a nice big shawl in these colors as well. And then the the Coal and the Bing Cherry I plan to use for hats, not together, two separate hats. So, and they come in 50-gram skeins, which is 150 yards, which makes it, about a sport weight? So maybe a DK, I don't know, somewhere between sport and DK. So I wasn't really sure if I could get a hat out of one skein, so that's why I bought 2 skeins of each. And if I have enough leftovers, I might do some striped mitts, because I love these colors together as well. And I really enjoy matching hat, mitt, and scarf sets. You might notice this from my project page. So yeah, I'm so pleased with all of this, and Manos del Uruguay is a really neat company because they work with women's cooperatives, and they're all about empowerment and economic independence. So I felt very good supporting them and my local yarn company and doing it at a fabulous sale. And this yarn, oh my gosh, it's a single ply. So I wouldn't use it for a sweater, but oh, it's so soft and squishy. It'll be perfect for neckwear and hats, and then mitts, as long as, I think it'll be fine for mitts. I'll knit it at a tighter gauge. So that is all of my wool piggery over Christmas break. Well, okay, that's all of my personal wool piggery. I did buy a few yarn for a few skeins for presents too, but I'm just going to talk about those as I start knitting the presents. I know for a lot of people, after Christmas, their gift knitting season is over, but 3 of my favorite people in the whole world happen to have, February birthdays. That would be my sister, my niece, and my really good friend who lives up here. So, my gift knitting season extends all the way through February, so you will be seeing some gift knitting projects again very soon. I just have to finalize some of the details with the various recipients. And I believe that I have talked for long enough. I hope that you enjoyed that and that you didn't just hear Thistle beating up her bed. I think she thinks that I should take her on a walk now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Thanks so much for tuning in. As I said before, you can find me in lots of places. Oh wait, I just remembered. I have a giveaway to do. I was just kidding apparently about the wrap-up. Although my memory card is almost full too. I was going to tell you about how fabulous Sock Innovation is, but I guess I can just do that really quickly. By Cookie A. It's got so many details on how to design your own socks and how to modify patterns if you need to take out stitch counts and I found it super inspirational. There are also a lot of really fun patterns in it, but for me the first half is what I found irresistible. And I think it would apply to more than just sock knitting, because she talks a lot about increases and decreases and how to do that in pattern, which is something I want to explore more this year. Maybe I should add that to my little resolutions list. So the fourth one would be exploring increases and decreases. Okay, so giveaway really quickly. Uh-oh, it's at the bottom of this. This is my knitting basket. Now it's piled with yarn. Okay. So Erin of Holland Handmade podcast, she is Mama to Abigail on Instagram and Ravelry. She sent me a surprise package, and I already knit up socks with one of the skeins of Felici she sent me, but she sent me 2 skeins of Felici, well, 2 sets, 4 skeins of Felici. She also sent these in the bubblegum gummy bear colorway, which is a lovely colorway, but it's not to my taste. Plus, I thought it would be nice to share the wealth since I have more than enough yarn at this point. So I will be giving these skeins away. All you have to do is I will start a thread in my Ravelry group and tell me one thing that you want to do in 2016 that is knitting or fiber related. If you don't like the word resolutions, then you can just call it an interest or something you'd like to explore. Maybe there's a particular pattern or yarn you want to try. Anything will work. You don't have to be a member of the group. It's fine if you just want to guest post. But yeah, so I will do the giveaway, let's see, in 2 weeks. So I'll start that thread and just leave a comment. Only 1 comment per person, please, because I'll be using random.org. And those are all the details. My apologies for rushing that. My memory card is almost full, but I decided to just put in another one. And just to let you know, I really liked how the Felici yarn knit up into socks, so I think it would make a wonderful treat for you or someone in your life. And I believe that the gummy bear colorway is no longer available. I think Knit Picks tends to run out of Felici, and it's like a limited run yarn. So it was very sweet of Erin to send me all that, and I can't wait to pass that generosity forward onto you. She also sent me 2 project bags, and she makes and sells these in an Etsy shop called Holland Handmade as well. And I used one of them. I brought it home for Christmas break, and it was really great. It's sock project sized, but for me at least, when I was flying on the airplane, I could also fit my Nook in there and my phone, which I use to listen to audiobooks. And that's really all I need on a plane, so that was very nice, and it's held up well to all of that. They're really well made, and she sent me 2. So I decided to share one of them with you and keep one of them. And when I thought about it, I thought it was so nice of Erin to send me this, and I met her through the podcast, and I thought about how grateful I was to everyone who has started watching the podcast and joined the group or left YouTube comments and really gotten to know me and reached out. And I think that's so generous of you, to be spending your time reaching out. So what I did was I went through and I counted all the messages people have posted in the Ravelry group and all the comments on YouTube. And then I added up all those numbers and I put them in random number generator, and I had it generate a winner for the second bag so that I could pass it along to someone who had been really supportive. So the winner is actually Mimi MC, who left the question for this week's episode, so that was kind of fun. I don't know her real name, it's not on Ravelry, but she's somewhere in the US, and she will be getting this lovely bag, and it's a drawstring style. Woo! I've been keeping it in my chest so that I don't get pet fur on it, so it should be pretty good. And it's lined on the inside too. So I will contact you, Mimi, so that I can get your address and get that in the mail. I'm not the best at mailing things speedily, so it might take a week or 2, let's be honest. But yeah, so I really appreciate that Erin sent me 2 so that I could send one to another friend. And that, I believe, is finally everything. So, if you're interested in that yarn, you have 2 weeks to tell me something you would like to do in 2016 about your knitting. And thanks so much. I'm sure this is a long episode with all of that stash acquisition. I look forward to more regular episodes in the future. And I hope that everyone is off to a very good start in 2016. I know that I am. It's good to be home in New York again. And now I'm just waiting for some more snow. There's not been nearly enough snow this winter. But there's a few months left, so I have my hopes. I will see you all next week, and thanks again for tuning in. Bye!